talk about prophetic character as it regards the month of Ramadan and what we see in the example of the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And so inshallah, I want to focus on 5 areas that we can examine from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, as well as the tabi'een and tabi'een in those generations, especially in the month of Ramadan. As we all know, Ramadan is the month of the Quran. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. And when we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we see riwayat, narrations, where, for example, an Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, it is mentioned that Jibreel alayhi salam would visit an-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam every night in Ramadan to revise the Quran. And so the early Muslims, they understood this, that they should increase in the amount of Quran that they should recite. Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah narrates that Qatada rahimahullah would complete 1 khatam of Quran every 7 days outside of Ramadan. But when Ramadan would come, he would complete 1 khatam every 3 days. And in the last 10, he would complete 1 khatam every single night. Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik would complete 1 khatam of Quran every 3 days in the rest of the year, but in Ramadan, he would complete 17 khatam in the month of Ramadan. Al-Aswad ibn Yazid would complete 1 khatam every 2 nights in the month of Ramadan, and he would only sleep, subhanallah, between Salatul Maghrib and Salatul Isha. And Sa'id ibn Jubair would complete 1 khatam every 2 nights in Ramadan. One thing that I want to highlight here is to answer the question that is this humanly possible? Right? Oftentimes we hear these narrations and it's awe-inspiring, but the question comes to mind is, how did they do it? And so for those accustomed to hifd al-Quran and maraja of the entire Quran, 1 juz can practically be recited within 20 minutes, with each page taking about 1 minute, if you're at that level. And if you multiply this by 30, you have a figure of about 600 minutes, which then equates to, anyone can do the math? 10 hours. Excellent, mashallah. So this means that the early Muslims, that they would spend in the month of Ramadan at the very least 5 hours per day with the Quran, at the very least. And if we segment that over the day, we find this is before work, during lunch break, on the way home, and a little bit more in the evening. And suddenly, if you look at it that way, it seems practical, it seems possible. Also, you can segment it through the daily salawat, right? Salat al-Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha, if you spend an hour each. I even heard from a relative that a friend of theirs, who's a hafiz, that this is a sister who is a mother, has children, and even works part-time, that they are able to read the entire Quran in the month of Ramadan every 2 days. This is possible among people even in our time. The next prophetic character in the month of Ramadan. So tilawat al-Quran is the chief and most important. But the next, as we know, the month of Ramadan is about Qiyamul Layl. There is nothing more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than performing the obligatory acts, but whoever can safeguard those while also praying these optional salawat like Taraweeh and Qiyamul Layl should aspire to be like the early generations in doing that. In Sunan al-Bayhaqi, it's mentioned that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh would instruct Ubay ibn Ka'b and Tamim ad-Dari radiallahu anhum ajma'in to lead the people in prayer during Ramadan, and they would read from the long surah, the surah that were at least 100 ayat. And some people, it's mentioned in the narration that some people would have to use a staff to keep standing to be able to partake in those qiyam. And they would finish close to the time of Fajr. Fast forward to now, we have to accommodate for everyone's work and school schedules, and we're out by an hour and a half, right? But at that time, in those generations, they would pray for so long. In the Muwatta of Imam Malik, it is mentioned from Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, that he heard his father say that they would finish their qiyam with only enough time for them to hurry and eat their suhoor. Only that much time, meaning they would start after Isha and they would go all the way almost until Salatul Fajr. These reports indicate that some of the early Muslims would spend more time in qiyam itself than Taraweeh, and this is not just in the last 10 nights. In another narration from Abdullah ibn Umar, in Sunan al-Bayhaqi, it's mentioned that he would pray at home during Ramadan when the people would leave the masjid, and he would grab his leather water skin and go to Masjid al-Nabawi and not leave until he had prayed Salatul Fajr. That this is what he would do. Just like with Tilawatul Quran, how I was talking about that practical aspect, one of the questions that come to mind is what? When it comes to Qiyam, what's the question that comes to mind, with especially trying to embody this example? Can anybody tell me? Huh? Getting tired. Can I cheat sleep? Right? How do I do this? So, according to a recent research conducted by a PhD student at Oxford, they studied something called polyphasic sleep pattern, in which a person only sleeps for a total of 4.5 hours a day. And this can actually allow for a productive day with less sleep. And the science behind this sleep model shows that a 3.5-hour sleep at night with 3 20-minute naps during the day, which could be at lunch or at home, can suffice a person without compromising on their productivity. So this is called polyphasic. If anyone's interested, it's called polyphasic sleep pattern. So this is possible. And remember, one of the narrations mentioned that he would sleep between Maghrib and Isha, right? The next prophetic character is regarding sadaqah. Ibn Abbas, what did he say? An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam kana ajwad an-nas. And that in the month of Ramadan, he was as generous as rih al-mursala, right? He was just as generous as a gentle breeze that touched everything, touched everyone. And there are two amazing lessons here. But number one, in the month of Ramadan, our generosity should increase. It is the month of good deeds. It is the month of dua being accepted. It is a month of the next being freed from the hellfire. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us from among them. But it is also a lesson in the impact that the increased engagement with the Quran that it would have on Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was already the most generous. And in the month of Ramadan, he became even more generous. And this is the impact of the Quran on him, brothers and sisters. Right? We always talk about growth and improvement and coming out of Ramadan better than when we came into it. The only way to attain that is through increasing in our recitation of the Quran, our tilawatul Quran, and our tafakkur and tadabbur of it, in our qiyamul layl. And the impact of these is seen, is felt upon a person by their family, by their community. Right? If we were to go and do surveys, personal surveys with our coworkers, right, with our relatives, with people that we were in school with, and we were to survey them that what is, Ibrahim and Habib, and what are they like in the month of Ramadan? What do you think most people would say? Right? Most people say they're more short-tempered, they're hangry. When you ask them how they're doing, they don't want to have a long conversation, right? But the impact of the increased tilawatul Quran and qiyamu bil-layl is supposed to have the impact that it had on the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he became more generous, more kind, more loving. And the rih al-mursala, meaning it was felt by everyone. Anyone that he came across, that he interacted with, felt this. It is mentioned that Abdullah ibn Umar would only ever break his fast in the month of Ramadan. He would do iftar with the poor, to the point that his family would come and request him to break fast with them, but he would refuse them and reprimand them. He was saying, this month is not for me to do iftar with you. It's for me to do it with those who are downtrodden, who are have less than me. Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri would busy himself in the month of Ramadan only with two things. He would busy himself with tilawat al-Quran and feeding the poor. The next prophetic character, in Imam al-Ghazali, in his works, he mentions taqleel min al-ta'am. Taqleel min al-ta'am. Lessening the amount of food that we eat. And the month of Ramadan is what? It's become the month of feasting, not fasting. The month of itikaf, not i'tikaf. Right? I'm sure you guys have heard that one before. That's why only 2 people left. Right? But Imam al-Ghazali, he says that if you want to wake up easily for Qiyamul Layl, do not overeat before bedtime. Right? And sometimes what do? We overeat before Salatul Taraweeh, and then some of us have to suffer because others are doing that from the burps and the smells, right? But this is from the piety and the prophetic character that we're supposed to engage in the month of Ramadan. In this regard, we find that the early Muslims would eat very little at iftar. In a riwayah, Ibrahim ibn Abi Ayyub stated that he would only have 2 full meals during the month of Ramadan, i.e. he would only have suhoor and iftar, and even then he would limit it. And for those of us that eat indiscriminately throughout the year, it's more beneficial to speak about food quantity as opposed to quality. The best tasting foods will be placed in front of us, right, in this month, and it's hard to resist it. And if we try to discriminate and eat one item and not another, it ends up becoming an issue. It ends up affecting our personality. So the advice here that I would suggest is that we go ahead and eat a little bit of everything, but to make sure that the quantity stays low. And make sure that we take slow, measured bites, and keep checking if we have that gnawing feeling in our stomach that we have earlier in the day when we're fasting. If it goes away, stop eating immediately, and then save the rest of your food for later, and then have smaller snacks. Scientific research points to the fact that your brain tells you you're full 20 minutes after you're actually full, right? So this means we end up overeating, right? We're so hungry and we chow down, and then we don't realize we are actually full. Not to mention the hadith, right? What did An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? That you should eat only, the narration states that you should eat only enough to keep your back straight. And then if you cannot do that, then 1/3 food, 1/3 drink, and 1/3 air. We do 1/2 food, 1/2 drink, right? But this is not from the etiquette and the behavior of the early Muslims, right? Our life is not a life of, we're not here for food, we're here for the worship of Allah. The last thing is hifdhul lisan. Hifdhul lisan. Siyam has been legislated for a higher purpose for us. It is designed to make us more, grant us more taqwa, to make us more disciplined, to make us more compassionate towards those who truly suffer, for us to feel like them. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever did not give up crooked speech and crooked actions, then Allah is not in need of his leaving food and drink. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, he explained that crooked speech includes lying, idle banter. Ibn Battal explains that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not mean by this that one should avoid fasting, but rather that fasting while behaving in this way will jeopardize the qubul, the acceptance of the fast. Mujahid ibn Jabr once said that there are 2 traits. Whoever guards themselves from them will have his siyam accepted, and they are backbiting and lying. And so we understand from this that the month of Ramadan, yes, we are preventing ourselves from that which is halal, food and drink during the day. But what we really should be safeguarding ourselves from is what? Is from foul speech, foul actions, foul thoughts, right? When someone comes, what does the hadith say? That when someone comes and they want to quarrel with you, you're supposed to say, Inni sa'im. Is this for you to tell them that, hey, I'm fasting? No, it's for the self, to remind yourself, I'm fasting from this. A friend of mine, he, subhanAllah, talking about Habib, I'm talking about Saleh, right? A friend of ours, he took this hadith to the next level. He says, I'm fasting for everything. Like we'll suggest, hey, let's go hang out at this place and be like, I'm fasting, right? Or we'll say, you know, we're gonna watch this game, you know, Man City versus Man U, be like, I'm fasting, right? He took it to that level, because when you're saying that, you're supposed to remind yourself, I'm preventing myself from this, I'm resisting from this, I'm restraining myself. And that's what the month of Ramadan is for, self-restraint, to develop that discipline, that taqwa, openly and secretly. I pray that we are always in the remembrance of Allah, and that our striving to become like the best generations is made easy. There is no time to lose, and the bar has been set very high, and each person will be judged according to their capability and ability. Growth takes time, and great achievements begin with a small step, and the great icebergs are but one snowflake on top of another. I pray that all of our acts of worship are accepted, and that there is profound healing and enlightenment before, during, and after this blessed month of Ramadan. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.